Good afternoon. Today we will be announcing the results of a public-private competition for the depot maintenance work at Sacramento Air Logistics Center. The Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition and Management, Ms. Darleen Druyun, who was the Source Selection Authority, will make the announcement. Accompanying Ms. Druyun today are the co-chairs of the Source Selection Advisory Council, Major General Michael Zettler, Director of Maintenance, Deputy Chief of Staff for Installations and Logistics, and Mr. Tim Byland from the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Contracting. General Retired Marsh, an independent advisor appointed by the Secretary of Defense Cohen, and Colonel Pete Bine, Program Manager for the Competed Workload. Ms. Druyun will take questions following the announcement. She will repeat each question because many interested parties are on the line listening to the press conference. Ms. Druyun.
Good afternoon. This is indeed a very important day for the Air Force as we continue our activities to reduce infrastructure, save taxpayers' dollars, maintain readiness, and structure the Air Force for the 21st century. The 1995 Defense Base Closure and Realignment Commission recommended that McClellan Air Force Base and the Air Logistics Center located at McClellan be closed. Congress and the President approved their recommendations in July of '95. To this end, the Air Force conducted a public-private competition in accordance with the OSD and Air Force guidance and policies, as well as the fiscal year 1998 National Defense Authorization Act, to determine the best source of repair for the Sacramento Air Logistics workload. The estimated savings of $638 million as a result of this competition will provide badly needed funds for modernization and readiness improvements. The source selection team painstakingly analyzed each proposal. I would like to personally thank each member of the Source Selection Advisory Council and the evaluation teams for their hard work on this very important task. This was our second public-private competition for the Air Force, and we worked hard with industry, the independent advisors, the depots, the local communities, and others in the Department of Defense to provide a level playing field that gave each participant an equal chance to win this competition. Capitalizing on the lessons learned from the C5 competition announced just about a year ago, I am confident our process was fair and equitable. Retired General Tom Marsh, one of the independent advisors, will make a statement after my announcement with his assessment of the process. We received two excellent offers. One from Ogden Air Logistics Center with Boeing Aerospace Support Center as a major subcontractor, and one from Lockheed Martin Sacramento Aircraft Center with AAI and GEC Marconi as major subcontractors. Both offerors submitted innovative, well-crafted proposals which made my job as the Source Selection Authority as challenging as any I have had, with the more than 200 source selections I've been responsible for in my career. As the Source Selection Authority and based on the evaluations from the Source Selection team, I have selected Ogden Air Logistics Center as the winning offeror. Ogden will perform the A-10 and Commodities workloads at Hill Air Force Base, and Boeing will perform the KC-135 work at the Boeing Aerospace Support Company at what was the San Antonio Air Logistics Center C5 maintenance facility. Ogden will complete the transition activities from McClellan to San Antonio during fiscal year '99. Ogden identified a requirement for approximately 350 employees to be hired from the existing McClellan workforce. Again, this award will result in savings of $638 million over the 9-year potential performance period. A very, very large portion of these savings can be attributed to the Boeing Aerospace Support Company in San Antonio, Texas, for the KC-135 portion of this work. I also want to recognize the tremendous effort of Lockheed Martin Sacramento Aircraft Center. They put together an excellent proposal, and I commend all of them for the hard work and dedication they put into this competition. It is important to note that this is not a notice of contract award, but rather an announcement of the anticipated award. There is currently a protest filed with the General Accounting Office against the grouping of this work into one solicitation, and we will await any award until the GAO decision is made. The GAO decision is expected on Friday, 25 September. If the protest is denied, we will proceed with the award to Ogden Air Logistics Center. The Department of the Air Force and the nation owe a debt of gratitude to the men and women at McClellan Air Force Base who have for generations so superbly maintained a variety of frontline equipment, to include the F-111, KC-135, A-10 aircraft, as well as ground power generators, hydraulics, instruments, and other critical commodity items. Their heritage is long, and they have a lasting legacy of quality maintenance performance that has contributed immeasurably to the readiness of the armed forces. Particularly noteworthy is their professionalism during this very demanding source selection, and I'd like to give a very special thanks on behalf of the rest of the Air Force for the sacrifices the folks at McClellan have made to bring this difficult process to a conclusion. I'd like to make it very clear that we pledge to continue to work with the Sacramento community to attract commercial work to these industrial facilities, to take advantage of the facilities and skilled workforce there, and to enhance economic redevelopment. Our commitment to facilitate the transition of McClellan from a military installation to a viable industrial source remains firm. I will now turn the podium over to General Marsh, one of our independent advisors, who will address the assessment by the independent advisors, and then come back up to address questions that I know you will have.
Thank you, Mr. Druyun. I was pleased to serve as an independent advisor to the Source Selection Authority, Mr. Druyun, on this very complex procurement. It was extremely complex. It was complex in the sense of the work to be performed, the fact that it was a public-private competition, and the fact that the facilities at either the McClellan Air Force Base or elsewhere could be used to perform the work. I was impressed with the extraordinary effort that was exerted by all involved to level the competition playing field. It had to take into account such diverse factors, complicated matters, as the fair market value of facilities and equipment that the offerers may choose to use in the performance of the work, such mundane items as income tax in the case of one offer and not that of another, overhead savings, which would accrue to either, but in different ways, based on the dilution of their ongoing work, and many other complex factors. I was most impressed with the evaluation process. I've participated in many over the course of my long career in this business in the Air Force. It was more open than any competition I've ever seen, and when I say open communications with the offerers and the Source Selection Evaluation Board and Source Selection Advisory Council. There were, as you know, several detailed face-to-face sessions with the offerers to understand better the weaknesses or deficiencies or strengths of their offerings. And finally, the evaluation notices that were issued by the Source Selection Advisory Council, the Source Selection Authority herself. Much debate, much rigor went into making sure that those were very clearly stated and very crisply indicated to the offerers what questions existed with respect to their offerings. In summary, I think it was a very fair and equitable process in every respect. Any concerns that we, the independent advisors, that is myself, Major General Eichmann, retired, or Mr. Dennis Trost, former of the Office of Secretary of Defense General Counsel, now retired, any of our concerns were quickly aired and resolved to our satisfaction. We are completely comfortable with the process as it was conducted. Thank you.
And if I could ask General Zettler, Mr. Byland, and Colonel Bine to come forward. General Zettler and Mr. Byland were my co-chairs of the Source Selection Advisory Council, and Colonel Bine is the program manager responsible for the competition of this workload and for transitioning it over the next 12-month period. So let's start with questions. Yes?
Two things. Maybe can you give us the dollar values that you expect to put on contract, and also the why of why did you pick Ogden?
Yes, the question is, can we give them the dollar values of what we expect to put on contract, and why did we select Ogden Air Logistics Center? And I think I have a chart that would be, no, that's the savings chart. Okay. When I look at the amount that's going to go on contract to Ogden Air Logistics Center, it's roughly
1.1.
Yeah, roughly $1.1 billion plus material, which is about
materials just over $400 million. Material was equitable between the two offers, so $1.1 billion to Ogden Air Logistics Center will be put on contract for the 135 and the Commodities workload and the A-10.
Plus, I will be making an adjustment to their costs. It's in the range of approximately $75 million. This is based on our risk assessment that we perform, looking at the cost of actually doing the transition over a year's period. I assess that to be about $20 million more than what they bid, and the remaining portion has to do with risk associated with their steady state operation. In addition to that, I will be making working with General Babbitt, the commander of Air Force Materiel Command, we gave them an overall credit of approximately $46 million for the overhead savings for all the other work that's done out at Ogden Air Logistics Center that's spread over an 8-year period, and we will be working to readjust the rates for all the other work that is done out there. Okay, the second part of the question. Okay, the second part of the question is why do we select Ogden Air Logistics Center? As we laid out very specific criteria within the source selection that we would follow. That criteria focused in on transition, looking at the risk associated with it, and it also looked at their steady state operations for each of the major workloads, KC-135, A-10, instruments, electrical accessories, and hydraulics. This was a best value determination. We used all of the criteria that we had laid out, and I basically did the final integration of that to come up with the best value determination. Ogden, in the area of transition, had slightly more risk than Lockheed Martin did. But in the area of steady state operations, I judged that Ogden had a slightly better proposal than Lockheed did. And when it came to looking at the cost, which was obviously a very important consideration, Ogden Air Logistics Center had the lowest total evaluated, most probable cost. Yes?
You said the transition completed in FY99. Does that mean that you expect all of the work to be moved out of Sacramento to Ogden and the Boeing facility at San Antonio within that fiscal year?
I'm going to let General Zettler answer that, because it has the basic question is will all of the work be finished at Sacramento and successfully transition to Ogden Air Logistics Center and to the Boeing facility down in San Antonio, Texas by the end of the fiscal year? General Zettler is going to answer that, because there will be a little bit of remaining workload of 135 that he can explain, I think, better than I.
Thank you. So, break this question up into several pieces is the best way to respond to you. The 135 workload will be taken over by the Boeing company at Bassey in San Antonio beginning in the fall of this year, and they'll induct their first airplane on 30 November of this year. The 135 workload that has been previously inducted to Sacramento will be the responsibility of the Air Force. And the Air Force will complete that work through the course of fiscal year 99, with the last airplane departing Sacramento in roughly March of 00. The A-10 workload will begin to transition nearly immediately to Ogden Air Logistics Center, and all those airplanes will be out of Sacramento by the end of fiscal year 99, 30 September. The Commodities workload will be a phased transition process. The transition will be taken over and completed in fiscal year 99. During the course of 99 and 00, work will be inducted into both Ogden and into Sacramento. As Ogden gains capability for the Commodities workload, they will take it over completely and then phase down, shop by shop, if you will, the workload at Sacramento. So there's a longer phase transition period for the workload in the Commodities area. We specifically stated that the transition for the Commodities workload had to be completed by September of 99, and Ogden has complied with that. They've taken complete responsibility for that workload. They will own the people doing that workload. It will be an operating location of Ogden at Sacramento. But for a period of time, we'll be doing Commodities workload at the two locations so that we minimize the risk to the user.
You might mention back shops.
Yes, Ms. Druyun points out there is also an element called the back shops, and the back shops are common processes that were used to support both the aircraft line and the Commodities line, as well as other workload at Sacramento, such as the ground communications electronics equipment. The back shops will remain online through the base closure to the base closure date so that all workloads are supported. When the last workload leaves, and the last back shop will transition out. Ogden will assume back shop work as they need it for their work in place, as will Boeing at San Antonio.
Yes.
Obviously, there was the memo from Secretary Peters, Secretary Hamre in May. I wondered if politics played a role in your mind at all in this selection. In other words, that because there was this perceived effort to get Lockheed Martin in on the competition, that this selection was sort of foreordained by, let's give it to Boeing since there's pressure the other way.
Okay, the question basically relates to the Peters memo to, I guess it was Secretary Hamre. I've never seen it. I've never read it. And whether or not this decision had anything to do with the politics. And let me make it very, very clear that I have never read that memo, and I have, frankly, no intentions of even reading it now. Politics played absolutely no decision in the process that we went through, and it absolutely played no decision in my choice of Ogden Air Logistics Center. I have a very clear record of laying out the criteria of what we're going to do in a source selection, and I follow it to the nth level. And if I look forward to being able to debrief the Lockheed Martin team and to share with them our evaluation. I look forward, as of 4 o'clock today, I handed over all of my paperwork, my documentation, my decision document, and my documentation is extensive. My decision document is well over 10 pages in length. I have handed all of that over to the GAO so that they too can validate that we followed the rules that we set out from the beginning, and that politics played no role.
When is Lockheed Martin when are you going to debrief them?
My goal is to try to do that next week. It'd be at Lockheed Martin's choice for time and place. Yes.
Hi. The private offer apparently had to increase its bid to reflect the fair market value of that base in Sacramento. I was wondering how much, if any, that had an effect on the complete bid, whether it had any effect on Sacramento losing that. Also, would you define in layman's terms what steady state operations is?
Yes, steady state operations refers to the transition period runs for 1 year. The question is, what is a definition of steady state operations? And steady state refers to the period that begins in 1 October 1999 for the next 8-year period. That's the production period of the contract, and that's what steady state operations refers to. The earlier part of the question referred to fair market value and what role did that play with respect to Lockheed Martin's proposal, and did it in fact hurt them in their assessment. The fiscal year 1998 Authorization Act required us to go in and do a fair market value of any closing base that, under BRAC that was proposed to be used to perform this workload. We, in fact, performed a fair market value assessment. That was part of my overall general considerations and part of my best value determination. I used a number of different methods to look at fair market value. We looked at the average price per square foot that Lockheed would pay each month over an 8-year period. We did a survey and looked at the costs that would be Lockheed would have to pay if they had gone outside of McClellan Air Force Base around the Watts Avenue area, and did an assessment there. And what we found is that Lockheed, in terms of fair market value, the price that was charged by the LRA, it was very, very comparable. I went in and did an analysis looking at the total cost to build all the buildings at McClellan dating back to 1938, and then we looked at the portion that had not been depreciated. The portion that had not been depreciated was a total of $30 million, and less than 10% of that $30 million would have applied to the Lockheed Martin proposal. And when we were through doing various tests like this, we concluded that I did not have to make any further adjustments for fair market value. I also looked at the Ogden Air Logistics Center proposal, recognizing that the Boeing Aerospace Support Center, which would be doing the KC-135 workload, is being done at a closing base. And it was determined that, that lease had been executed last October or so with the local reuse authority, the Greater Kelly Development Corporation down at Kelly. And it really was an arm's-length relationship. It had nothing to do with this competition. They had entered into that agreement and actually have already turned out their first C-17s. They have MD-17s in there that they're working on, rather MD-10s, C-17s, and will be inducting their first KC-10s next month. So we went in and did an analysis there as well and concluded that no additional adjustment needed to be made for fair market value. I also looked at the depreciation of the equipment that would be used as well, and we did an appropriate depreciation in accordance with the rules, and I also ensured that the rates that were being charged by Ogden Air Logistics Center included depreciation rates for government-furnished equipment as well. Yes?
I have a question about the 50-50 rule. Were you close to it on this? I mean, are you close to, is the Air Force close to being at 50% for depots and private contractors? And how much headroom do you have under 50-50 for the next competition, the Kelly engine work?
The question relates to 50-50, how much of a role did this play, and how much headroom do we have remaining under 50-50 for the propulsion competition? And I'm going to let General Zettler, who manages that on a weekly basis, respond to that question.
Thank you. There's adequate headroom to conduct this competition and make this announcement, and ultimately, if we're allowed to proceed with the award. The second part of your question is how much headroom is there, and we will fit those numbers into the headroom equation, and we will look to the future. It's a constantly evolving and closely managed figure. So right now we're very comfortable that we're well within the 1998 NDAA with respect to headroom for this award. I anticipate the follow-on question is, what about the propulsion business area? And we'll make that assessment when we see the final proposal numbers from the propulsion business area.
And that's still in source selection.
That's right.
Yes.
You said 350, Ogden needed for 350 people from Sacramento. Is that going to be the total plus up of Ogden's workforce? And totally unrelated, when do you expect the contract award for Cal?
Okay, the question relates to what is the total plus-up of the Ogden workforce as a result of winning this competition if we are allowed to make a contract award based on the GAO protest that's still in process. And I'm going to let Mr. Bylam, would you like to answer that one? Sure. All right.
The current workforce at Sacramento, government employees and contract employees to support the competed workload is roughly 2,200. And we are looking at an approximate number of 750 employees to cover the workload at Ogden and another 750 employees to cover the workload at San Antonio at the Boeing facility. So they're about reducing the employees by about a third.
The 750 at Ogden doesn't match the 350 Mr. Druyun said that that Ogden expects a need from Sacramento.
The 350 are employees they expect to hire from the Sacramento area and move to Ogden. The rest of the workforce would come from other sources. And the second part of the question, I believe, was the award of the propulsion business area, and we expect to do that sometime in the month of October. Thank you.
With regard to the personnel, the 350 is the number that, as Tim said, they expect to get from Ogden, but they gave us a very well-conceived plan of where they will move other employees from Ogden Air Logistics Center into these workloads and then backfill those people with new hires, or where they will hire new people and put them on these workloads. So they gave us an integrated personnel plan here that we evaluated, took into consideration, and said it was reasonable.
Okay.
Can you just compare the cost of the two bids? Like how many, if you had awarded it to Lockheed Martin, what would the savings have been?
I think I ran those numbers earlier today. The question is, can I compare the cost of these two bids? And I'm going to let Colonel Bine answer that question. He ran those numbers for me earlier today.
Well, as Mrs. Druyun stated earlier, the Ogden Boeing bid came in at approximately $1.1 billion, and the Lockheed Martin bid came in at approximately $1.25 billion. And Lockheed and their major subcontractors, AAI and GC Marconi, that would equate to approximately $400 million in savings versus the $638 that we received from the Ogden team.
Just a quick follow-up. Is that $1.1 billion a year or over the whole contract?
That's over the entire 9-year contract. The question was the $1.1 billion 1 year over the that's the entire contract.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm missing a critical piece of information here. What's this GAO activity? Who filed it? And usually these get filed after you guys announce who you pick.
How about if I asked our lawyer to come up and answer that question, since he's been working that? The question is, would you tell us about the GAO protest? And I have asked Mr. Greg Petkoff of our General Counsel's office to respond to that.
Yes, a company called PIMCO, Aeroplex Inc. filed a GAO protest this summer challenging the bundling determination that was made to combine the KC-135 work with the commodities workload, and that decision is expected this Friday.
Why do you announce it?
Are you confident since you won the protest to GAO and the bundling of the propulsion stuff was rejected by the GAO? Do you feel good about this one too?
I don't want to speculate on how GAO will rule in the Sacramento protest.
Is there a particular reason why you announced the award before the protest is decided?
The question is there a particular reason why we announced the results of this competition before the protest was decided? First of all, GAO is aware that we were going to proceed with our plans to announce the results of this competition. GAO is also aware that we're not going to proceed with any kind of contract award until that protest is announced. The reason why we proceeded with it is I have had a tremendous team of folks working this literally 7 days a week. I think we're getting tired of coming in here every Saturday and Sunday. Our spouses and families are sick of seeing us come home at 11 and 12 o'clock at nighttime and doing red eyes back and forth to the West Coast. We've had just a tremendous effort that has been ongoing, and I concluded that once we had finished our work, and we finished it yesterday late in the afternoon, that we would proceed to make the announcement today, because that type of data is going to leak. And I don't intend having that leak. I wanted it to be officially announced today and, let the world understand the process we had gone through and what the results yielded from that process. And as I said earlier, when you look at the results of this competition producing $638 million in savings to the taxpayer over a 9-year period, it represents considerable savings to the United States Air Force. Yes.
Apparently, in the first contract that was awarded several months ago to Warner Robins, they got a credit for using their base more efficiently, and currently there was some move to close that, what was called a loophole. And I was wondering if it was closed completely, and if not, if Hill benefited from that.
The question relates to the $154 million worth of overhead savings that was credited to the C5 competition, and then the fact that it was viewed as a loophole, and what we did to close it, and do we feel like we completely closed it. We spent a considerable amount of time looking at the overhead savings. I laid out very clearly what the rules would be with respect to overhead savings. And in this competition, we credited Ogden's remaining workload with overhead savings of approximately $46 million spread over a 9-year period. And I feel very comfortable that this was done in a very fair and equitable fashion, and that we clearly followed the rules that we had set out.
So $46 million over 9 years doesn't sound like it had the... that solely was a reason for Ogden winning.
No, it was not. As I said earlier, it was an integrated best value decision. And we looked at all of the factors that we laid out in that competition, as well as costs. And when I integrated them together, Ogden was the clear winner. Question in the back.
Given that the winner of this competition was a teaming effort between the public sector and the private sector, can you tell me how the savings, or excuse me, the workload will be spread under the rules under 50-50?
Yes, the question relates, since this was a public-private teaming arrangement with the winning bidder, Ogden Air Logistics Center, meaning they teamed with Boeing, how will this be counted under the 50-50 rules? And I'm going to once again let General Zettler respond to that.
Similar to my response earlier, we're going to do the total assessment of the dollar value of the contract, and then we're going to conform to the letter of the law, and we'll make an assessment of how it plays in the total headroom equation. We believe that there are some interpretations that we need to consider, and we will work within the department to do those, and we'll be totally forthcoming in our complete analysis when we've seen the numbers from the propulsion business area, which is still in source selection, and as Ms. Druyun said a moment ago, probably be awarded or announced in the middle of October.
Just to clarify, so the Boeing part of the work will be charged against Boeing, against public, private, and the Ogden part will be charged against public then. So you're going to parse it out by the percentage of the work they do? Is that what I heard you say?
That's what I've said. That's what our interpretation of the legislation is today. And we will work that through the department and make the final allocation of the numbers as appropriate when we really don't have a problem right now. So we'll work that through the propulsion business area.
Yeah, $1.1 billion Boeing imminent award. The $400 million for, I think you said equipment. That's not included in that then? I mean, that's what is.
Yeah. Colonel Bine, if you would like to come up and help me respond to this question. The question relates to how do the costs break out between Ogden Air Logistics Center and the Boeing team member, and then how does the commodities or the cost of government-furnished material figure into this? Pete?
Thank you. When we established the ground rules of the solicitation, we established right up front in our requirements documentation that the government would provide parts, government-furnished equipment. And so both offers knew that the government-furnished equipment was coming to them and they would not have to pay for that. And so the price that the team of Ogden and Boeing gave us at $1.1 billion does not include that $400 million price tag for that GFE, and that is at the contract award level. Now we look at it at the bottom line, the total evaluated cost and the most probable cost to the government. We take that into consideration. But as Mrs. Druyun said, between the two offers, it was essentially equal. It was a wash.
So the GFE in both cases would have been the same, or is it?
Yeah, the government furnished material was basically a wash, equal between the two. Yes.
$1.1 billion, how much would Ogden get and how much would Boeing be responsible?
Okay, the question is of the $1.1 billion, how much does Ogden get and how much does Boeing get? And it's about a 45-55 split.
45, yeah.
About 45% goes to, Ogden.
Yes, 45%.
And 55% of that value goes to Boeing. Yeah, Ogden is roughly $450 million, and the rest is Boeing. Well, you can do your quick math.
Just to understand this number, the savings number, that is compared to what it costs to do it at McClellan right now?
Yes, we had a baseline government estimate, and that's what that is compared to. If McClellan were not closing, if it were going to continue in operation, the amount of savings resulting from this competition is $638 million. Over 9 years, yes. Yes.
Did the C5 process, since that's ongoing, in any way affect your risk assessment? Do you at any point feel like you needed to go back and change your criteria because of experience you're getting here with transition?
The question relates to the ongoing C5 contract and whether or not we felt the need to go back and to make any changes to the C5 as a result.
No, just as a kind of a lessons learned that maybe your initial risk assessments were wrong. You need to change your matrix for this competition.
Yeah. In essence, what lessons learned did we carry over from the C5 into this competition? I think very clearly we looked hard at the lessons learned that came out of the C5 competition to see how we could improve the process and basically level the playing field. When I look at the actual contract performance to date in the C5, it has been going exceedingly well. The last airplane should have left, Kelly, the 15th? Okay, it has departed on the 15th of September. So the workload has been fully transitioned to Warner Robins Air Logistics Center. We looked at not only the issue of overhead, but we looked at a number of other issues to make sure we had a level playing field. As we were going through this competition, I did take lessons learned out of the C5, for example. They did not get as many people to move from Kelly Air Force Base down to Warner Robins. And so that was part of the overall database that we used in assessing the transition risk and basically making adjustments for the piece that would be done by Ogden as well as the piece that would be done by Boeing based on the data coming out of the C5 as well as other data that was available to us. Yes?
You're going to love this question, but does this mean that the Depot Caucus was correct in forcing the Air Force to push for public-private partnerships as opposed to the Air Force's original plan with just going with private companies competing? And then versus just the public sector?
Yes, the question is, was the Depot Caucus correct in the 1998 Authorization Act requiring us to allow the public sector to team with the private sector? Obviously, I'm not going to take any exceptions to what was in the 1998 Authorization Act, but I can say this very sincerely. When you look at the cost for the commodities workload between the public sector with the private sector, it was basically a wash. When you look at the competition between Boeing and Lockheed Martin on the KC-135 workload, it was very clear that you had a private competition in that arena, and that Boeing won it based on the rates that they are charging, both direct, indirect, and G&A, as well as profit. And it's also clear that in that private-to-private portion, when you just look at the facts themselves, that the Boeing Corporation proposed process improvements that we did not see in the Lockheed Martin side.
On that competition between Boeing and Lockheed, did it help Boeing much that the fact that they make the KC-135 made the KC-135?
The question is the fact that Boeing was the original equipment manufacturer of the KC-135, that helped them in the overall competition. And I'm going to let Colonel Bine, would you like to try that one? Okay, Colonel Bine.
I think for the most part, one would think that Boeing would have an upper hand in being the original equipment manufacturer. And for the most part in this competition, we didn't feel that they had a strict upper hand in that sense. They did propose a unique approach to overhauling the 135, different than what we do at Sacramento, and I would attribute their analysis of that strategy and how they presented it as to being probably the single item in my mind that gave them strength over the Lockheed approach.
So does that mean they had that their unique approach was seemed viable and was less costly than what Lockheed was suggesting?
Yeah, the question is, was their unique approach more viable and less costly? And the answer is yes.
Can you explain what this unique approach is?
Well, you can essentially, from my standpoint, you can do it in two ways. You can put an aircraft in a hangar and run people in and out of it, and doing the maintenance work in that fashion, or you can use like a production line type of affair where you move the aircraft from point to point within your facility, and that is how the Boeing team proposed it. They also included a teaming approach with their maintenance labor force, 16 separate processes established, and those teams would move to with the aircraft as well.
Okay, one final question, and because I have to run over to the Hill and do some briefings over there.
The folks at Sacramento, could you kind of give us a work down of how their the workload there, the people employment at Sacramento will go down over the years? The base is supposed to be closed in 2001.
Yeah, July
and the last,
2001.
we talked about some of the last workload going out, in 00. So what will be the phase out of the workload at Sacramento?
The question is, what is the phase out of the workload at Sacramento between now and 2001? The commodities workload will clearly be transitioned by the end of September 1999.
I'm talking number of people. Can you do that by people?
Okay, I'm going to let Colonel Bine try to answer that to let you know what we're talking about and approximate numbers of personnel.
We have a reduction in force plan established for Sacramento that is interrelated to this competition. As we speak, we're undergoing a reduction in force because we have shut down the 111 line and we have shifted the F-15s off station within the Air Force. Next year, we'll see a reduction in force that approximates the competition workload, about 2,200 people. And that will leave standing at McClellan workforce with respect to the center activity there, made up of mostly material management folks that will be moving to Tobyhanna. as came out in the BRAC Commission.
Those are maintenance people.
Those are,
Tobiana.
now, I don't have the numbers for ODOT and OT1, but the 99 RIF of about 2,200 people constitutes the majority of.
How many are in that the Tobiana, the first workforce that's going to Tobiana?
I don't have that number.
Sacramento used to have about 8,200 people. I don't know whether that's obviously been reduced with the previous workload. So.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.